Okay, this is Michael Pepper for MMABay.co.uk and MMA Bay Radio with UFC light heavyweight Jason Brilz. Jason, thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me.
First off, I just wanted to ask you how you got into the sport of mixed martial arts. You've had a long and storied career spanning 2 decades. How did you get into the sport to begin with?
I got into the sport, probably 2000, I think, right around there. I was just finished my wrestling career at the University of Nebraska at Omaha, and I was done. I was coaching, had nothing to do, and had a buddy come up to me and goes, "Hey, you should try this." I go, "Okay." And seriously, the next day the promoter called, says, "Heard you're interested in fighting." I go, "Oh, all right." About Thursday, and that was, I think that was Friday, so the following Thursday, I was in there, my buddy came up, showed me a couple moves. This is side control, this is mount, this is the guard. I go, all right. Thursday I was fighting. Got hooked. It was pretty cool.
Okay, I mean, how have you seen the sport develop over the years? Like you say, you started back in March 2000, and, it's your next fight's next month, April 2011. How have you seen the sport develop?
It's just with the athletes and the techniques that people are using now. How everything's starting to flow together. I remember back in the day, you'd fight a boxer and be like, "Yeah, this is a piece of cake because I'm just going to come right at his legs and take him out," and just how everybody's evolved so much. It's pretty cool. Back in the day, I remember, my first, 3, 4 fights, I bet I didn't even throw a punch on my feet. I just keep your hands up, clinch, take them down. And that's what we did. You can't get away with that anymore.
Okay, fast forward into your more recent career. You were last in action at UFC 114 back in May, where you lost to Brazilian MMA legend Antonio Rogério Nogueira via split decision. Many people were calling for the judges' heads after that one. What was your take on the fight and also the scoring by the judges?
You know what? I've been in the game a long time, so my take on the fight, even before I got into the fight, I go, you know what? I didn't care win, lose, or draw. I was fighting a legend. I was fighting somebody that I'd always hoped to fight. Somebody of that skill set, just to see where I was at. And so I didn't care if I won, if it was a win or a loss or a draw. And even now, it doesn't really matter. To me, I mean, it was a great fight. It was a fun fight, and for me to be able to go in there and hang with a world-class athlete like that, that was in itself a victory for me, if that makes sense. But
yeah, of course. I mean, what do you think to the judges' scores overall, though? There was a lot of controversy. A lot of people weren't very happy about it, giving you a lot of credit for your performance that night.
And I love that. I'll take it whenever I can get it. The fan support. But if I went back and looked at the fight and I tried to look at it from from a third party view, and that first round, it all hinged on what you saw in that first round. And that first round was, I could have seen it being a draw, or the edge going either way. It was so close, because I think the second and third rounds were pretty clear cut on who won those. And then, if you look at it completely unbiased, like I've been trying to, a lot of people always, especially when the underdog does a lot better than he's supposed to, I read a couple things where my head was supposed to be in the third or fourth row and this and that, but, when the underdog does a little bit better than he's supposed to, they're like, oh, he hung with him and he did this and that, and why not give it to the underdog? So I think that's why initially, a lot of people were saying that I won and whatnot, but I thought it was a really, really close fight.
Okay, you stepped up at short notice for that fight, taking it about 3 or 4 weeks out after Forrest Griffin got injured. Was Nogueira's wrestling game something that you deliberately targeted? Of course, it's one of your strengths, and I think Nogueira's had quite some problems with it in the past, notably against Matyushenko. Was this something you targeted during the game plan for the fight?
You know what? It's something that I always target. It's I don't study a lot of tapes of previous fights. Maybe I'll watch a tape or two just to see, what stance if they're southpaw or just a regular stance. But my whole game plan was to go out and just throw my game plan at him. Everybody said he's great on the ground, but I've rolled with some pretty good guys too, and held my own. I was like, what? I'm not. My coach he goes, fight the position, not the man. Fight the position, not the man. So I just told myself over and over for about 3 weeks, fight the position, not the man. So when I got out there, I really wasn't fighting the gear. I was just fighting, the moves that he was throwing at me. And, so I stuck with my game plan. My game plan was take him down and try and beat him up on the ground. And,
Okay, your next opponent's Vladimir Matyushenko, who you take on at UFC 129 in Toronto, Canada next month. Firstly, what kind of experience do you think you're in for, and what emotions do you think you're going to be feeling when you compete in that card, which is by far the biggest the UFC have ever put on in front of 55,000 people?
It's going to be unbelievable. First off, in front of that many people, it's going to be great. I mean, I love that atmosphere. I love being in front of people, and I love performing well in front of people. So I think the fight's going to be great. With Vladdy, I look at it like I'm fighting an older version of myself. I mean, he's great wrestling, just a tough dude. So I'm just sort of looking at it like I'm just going to fight myself. How am I going to beat up myself? And I think that's what's so cool about this sport is I get to fight a world class jiu-jitsu player. Now I get to fight a world class wrestler. And so I think I'm not sure how the fight's going to go. In 20-some fights with me, I've never really changed up my game plan. My game plan is really no surprise to anybody. I'm gonna come out. I'm gonna look for the takedown, and but I don't know what his plan is. If he's gonna come out and look for a takedown on me, or he's just gonna stand there and try and box me. Try and box with me.
Okay, I watched an interview earlier today with Mark Hominick, who's basically saying every fighter on the card, whether it be Randy Couture or George St. Pierre, this is the biggest fight of their career due to it being in front of the 55,000 people. Is that exactly how you're feeling about this fight as well? It's the biggest fight of your career to date?
Oh, definitely. I mean, every fight's, every next fight is the biggest fight of your career because at any time you can be cut from the organization. So, but, just with that, but then also to be in front of 55,000 people, and to be on this card, there's going to be at least 1 million pay-per-view. Everybody wants to see St. Pierre and Shields and Machida and Ramp and Couture, and then you got with the 45-pounders, Aldo and Mark now. Hominick fighting. I mean, geez. I mean, you even have Ben Henderson fighting there, and so I mean, just the card itself, it's phenomenal. I'm pretty lucky. I think we're on the main card, and so I was looking at the lineup, I was like, well, we're going to be the first fight, so at least I'll, after the fight, at least I'll be able to sit back, find a seat, and watch some great fights for the rest of the night too. So, yeah, I'm super pumped. I'm real excited for it, and heck, I'm fighting on the card. So,
okay, as you've said, you're both wrestlers, very similar styles. I don't think it's going to be any surprise if you two cancel yourself out and the fight remains on the feet for much of the fight. How do you think you're going to match up with Vladimir's stand-up game, and have you been concentrating on your stand-up game with those thoughts in mind?
Oh yes, I think we're going to match up quite well with them. I have a great Muay Thai instructor. He dumbs it down pretty good for me. On my stand-up, I feel real confident in it. I'm starting to get a little bit crisper. I'm trying to use more head movement, more angles now. I mean, something ever since I've started fighting in the UFC, I've tried to take my training up to the next level too. So I think every fight that I've been in, I've shown a little bit more. And now with almost a year layoff, I think I should be able to come out and really dictate the pace on the feet.
Okay, your two losses to date with the UFC have both been very contentious split decision losses. What do you think you need to do to take your career to the next level? And have you brought anybody into this camp, whether it be a new training partner or a trainer or a nutritionist, to help you achieve this?
No, I'm sticking with the same trainers and everything. It's not like I've been outclassed in any of my fights. I've lost 2 in the UFC, both of them split decisions that in reality could have went either way. My training partners are, I brought in a new jiu-jitsu guy. I didn't really bring him in. He came to our gym, and John Hansen is his name. It's just phenomenal. He's been doing jiu-jitsu about, I think, 3 or 4 years, something now. And last year he took second at the Worlds. And, just phenomenal. Just a phenomenal jiu-jitsu player. He just lost in the Abu Dhabi trials to, not Verdum, but Schreimer. But anyways, lost to him, got second and won, and third in the gi, and second in the no gi. So, just a phenomenal jiu-jitsu player, along with other guys that I've been using before. And like I said, I got Kurt Pedoni as my stand-up coach, and then I'm still using my buddies at CrossFit Omaha, who, if you watch the CrossFit Games, we have 2 ladies that are in the top 20 in the world, and our team got, I think, 3rd last year overall in the competition. So, they know what they're doing. They have, they're phenomenal strength and conditioning coaches. And then a nutritionist. I'm not the biggest guy on diet. I might not eat the healthiest. That's why if you look at all the other guys that are weighing in, they're all pretty cut up, and I'm not very cut up, but, I enjoy eating, so being healthy and eating healthy. So other than that, that's my camp there. I got a bunch of great guys, a bunch of great sparring partners.
Okay.
Pushing me.
Okay, much has been made of the recent takeover by Strikeforce, by Zuffa, the parent company of the UFC, and the pros and cons discussed for those on the Strikeforce roster. How do you think it's going to affect guys on the UFC roster, both in a positive and negative way?
You know what? I look at it as a positive. Now we have, almost not necessarily a feeder organization for the UFC, but a place for guys to, work their way up into the UFC through Strikeforce, and you know, I mean, they got guys in Strikeforce. I think that could jump right in here and be competitive. You know, be competitive in the UFC for a belt. But I think for the fighters, you know, I think it's more exposure, and I think you have a better payday, especially on some of the prelim cards. But mainly exposure, you know, for the fighters. I think that's going to be great. You know, cons, you're always going to have cons on something, but I mean, you know, I really can't think of, you know, any major things that are going to affect the fighters in the long run. I think it's a good move that'll help the fighters.
I mean, so long as they keep it the way they are doing with Strikeforce being a separate entity, do you see it being a positive thing for maybe some of the younger guys that are on the UFC roster being able to drop down onto the Strikeforce cards and get some good publicity still, get some good experience, get seen by millions of people, and then maybe move back up to the UFC?
Definitely. Especially the younger kids that you know, you get thrust into that limelight, and all of a sudden, I mean, you're not grounded. If you're not, you know, you don't have a good support group or something, and you get all of a sudden you get all this money thrown at you, and all of a sudden now you're not going to the gym as much as you were because you have to go meet your buddies out at the bar, or you're out at the bar or partying the night before because you're a UFC star and this and that. You know, I think Strikeforce will be good for a lot of the younger guys, and you know, even some of the older guys that get caught up into that. I think it'll, and then like you were saying, you know, not where you're constantly fighting, you know, like the number one contender, you know, for the belt. You know, you need to get some fights in there, you know, where you're not fighting the very best every time, especially when you're young. You know, you have to get some fights where you can build your skill set, where you get comfortable throwing, you know, different combos, and like, okay, now, you know, now I feel more comfortable doing, you know. So I think it'll be a good fit for the UFC.
Okay, finally, for the million-plus pay-per-view buyers and the 55,000 people in attendance, what can everyone expect from you at UFC 129?
What they can expect from me is that I'm not going to be backing out. I'm going to go right at Vladdy. And from what I know of Vladdy, he's going to come right at me. And I think we're going to meet in the middle, and something special is going to happen. I think it's going to be a great fight, where neither one of us are backing down, because we're both trying to get to that next level. I think it'll be a fast-paced fight, and you know, if we're going to start off the pay-per-view, we're going to start it off right.
Okay, have you got any sponsors or anybody else you'd like to mention or thank before we finish?
You know what? I got CrossFit Omaha, Premier Fighting Gym, Tap Out Mouth Guard, Hayabusa, and I think that's all for right now. So I'd like to thank those guys. Healthy Whey Protein. I'd like to thank those guys for helping me live a dream.
Okay, thanks for taking the time to speak to MMA Bay, and good luck at UFC 129, Jason.